Retro Warriors episode 280. Woo! As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard, Chris Saturn.
Hello.
Saturn, we do have some housekeeping.
Housekeeping?
First up, you can, we do.
Oh.
It's not in the notes.
It was not in the notes. I didn't know what to think.
I know. It's a terrifying moment of uncertainty. In these uncertain times.
Oh, shit, we have to ad-lib.
Read the teleprompter! I
never learned to read.
As always, you can check the episode description for timestamps to jump to the topic at hand. Also, we have a whole bunch of stuff up on our Redbubble.
Oh, that's true. Both of us said we wanted to make sure we mentioned that this episode.
Yeah, we have got stickers, pins, socks. I put socks up there. Mugs. You can buy Retro Warriors stuff there.
Can I get the jockstrap yet?
I do have the markup set such that we do get kicked a solid couple of dollars depending on the item you purchase.
Nice.
Because I know some people are like, I want to buy a thing to support you guys. I don't just necessarily want a thing. So hopefully that will satisfy both camps.
No.
But the markups aren't insane. They're just we get if you buy a sticker, we get $1.
Yeah.
You know. And then if you buy like a shirt, I think we get $5.
Oh, fancy.
Also, Andrew designed multiple new logos for us. He designed a Talking Wizards logo and a Cinema Rogues logo and a Food Chat logo, which is the Talking Wizards in-joke. We have one forthcoming that I haven't put up yet, but it's a Game Dumpster
Welcome
logo.
Welcome to the Games Dumpster.
Yeah.
Can't even fucking say it.
It's been a long time,
right?
Since we talked about the Game Dumpster.
The Games Dumpster.
But it's that's all original art by Andrew. He drew it all himself, and it's awesome, and I love it. And you should go buy a Talking Wizards sticker or some Retro Warriors socks because
the Game Dumpster art that he drew is especially great because it's got that thing from Altered Beast in there. And it's got an Atari Jaguar and a Virtual Boy. It's so great.
I'm going to that one. I was gonna post, but I had to. It's my daughter's birthday today, so I didn't get it posted. But I'm very excited to post that design. I do have some stickers coming for myself that I'm still waiting to get here from Redbubble. But we do have merchandise. If you want to support the show, then that is a great way to do it. If you don't want to go the Patreon route. Also, if you just want some Retro Warriors or related show merch, that you can do it there. It's a place to do it. And so far, all the stuff I've gotten from Redbubble has been relatively high quality.
Yeah, same here. I've had good luck with them.
And relatively well priced. So, also, while you're there, you can pick up a sticker of a possum playing a banjo, which I found, and I'm very excited about.
Yeah, I need to see that one once you get it.
It's not obviously related to any of our stuff, but I liked it. So
it will be now.
That's enough about that. My week.
Yes, sir.
I have been playing the Stadia.
Yes.
I got a 3-month trial of Google Stadia Pro from being a Google One subscriber.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'm not going to spend any money on it. I'll get on it and check it out. And I will say, for people that don't know, my internet on a good, clear day in optimal conditions, I get a 30 meg downstream.
Yeah.
And I have, roughly 24 devices connected to my network. So I have a relatively congested network, and I have relatively slow internet. Usually it clocks between 15 and 20. That's my general downstream. And what prompted me to even look at Stadia was that GeForce Now has been adding some stuff and adding future GOG integration and things. And I was like, man, I want some of these streaming services because I own a lot of these games, and like GeForce Now connects to what I have, and I technically have the Microsoft's xCloud beta because I pay for Game Pass, and it would be nice to play some of these things.
Yeah.
And they do not work. GeForce Now won't just quit giving me warnings like, you really shouldn't be doing this. It's not built for this. Stop. Anytime I even try to load it, xCloud runs terribly. And so I was like, well, just because I'm poking around with streaming, I'll try Stadia. And I will say this about it. I maintain that their storefront and their business model are both fucking trash.
Yeah.
It is asinine for you to ask me to pay $60 full for a game that I do not own in any real physical or even digital capacity.
Yeah.
And while I understand that there is an argument to be made by people who say, well, technically when you buy a Steam game, you're just buying the rights to use it in the first place.
Right.
In practice, it doesn't necessarily work out the same.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, I guess my point is that when you're buying digital games, you're already not really getting a thing most of the time.
Right. And you're getting a thing that
is...
can be withdrawn a lot of the time. Now,
right.
Granted, if you have it downloaded, you can hack it so that you can keep playing it, even if your license is withdrawn, but not with streaming games.
But additionally, the actual storefront, like navigating the Stadia store, sucks.
Oh, yeah.
If there's a search function, I couldn't even find it.
No, there's not. That's been a recurring joke on the Stadia subreddit.
It's Google.
Is people
They're
are like,
the search company.
If only they could find some company who is very good at making search engines to create a search engine for the Stadia storefront.
Because I'd seen some game while I was scrolling through all the categories, and I was like, oh, I want to go back to such and such game and claim it because I have the Pro account.
Right.
And I couldn't get back to it, and I spent 20 minutes trying to find the same damn game.
Yep.
And so, all that said, the technology is frankly amazing. It is astounding how well it works.
Oh, yeah.
Now, granted, I do have very slow internet, so a lot of the time I'm playing games in relatively low res, but they're very playable and very smooth and have very low input lag.
Yeah.
And for a lot of the time, I kind of don't even notice that I'm playing a streaming thing.
Yep. That's been my experience with it as well.
The technology is so good that it's making me angry that it's wasted on a trash platform like Stadia.
Yeah.
Because the tech really is, and I'm sure it's just because Google can afford to have obscene amounts of data servers,
right?
With obscene priority. So I get that the only reason it's so good is because they have the backbone to provide the infrastructure for something like this, whereas GeForce and Microsoft just don't.
Yeah.
But that said, the tech is amazing. I'm blown away at how well it works on my shit internet. And when it does drop down, for the most part, there have been some hiccups. For the most part, it just drops my resolution down a little bit, and then the game keeps going smooth. So on the Stadia, I've been playing the new Super Hot Mind Control Delete, which is stellar if you love Super Hot. It's more Super Hot, but they added new things to it.
Yeah.
And it's great, and I love the original. I love the VR version. Super Hot is fantastic if you haven't played it. It's like it's as close to a turn-based FPS as I think they'll ever be able to make.
Right.
I've also been playing Sniper Elite 4 because I do like the shooty gun military games. We don't talk about it a lot, but I do, and it's fun, and I get to shoot people, and it does slow-mo skull explosions when I shoot them. Yeah. And I like that because I like gore. I've also been playing Orcs Must Die 3, which I only know about because I played the first one a ton. Mm-hmm. It's a really great game. It's a third-person tower defense game. Right. But it's also like a little action game. So you build your tower defenses, but then you control a character who has like actual attacks, and you attack the waves of enemies as they come in. Mm-hmm. And it's just really good. It's just more Orcs Must Die with new stuff added in. I didn't play the second one, so I don't know what all's new and what all's not. But man, just what a fun. I really like tower defense games, and I find them very cathartic and relaxing. Very much in the same way that I enjoy like city builders, which I know they're different, like from a mechanical perspective, but from a like meditative solitaire game perspective, they're kind of similar.
I get it. I can understand that.
And it's just been a blast. I'm sad that whenever my Stadia Pro runs out, I'm not going to have access to any of these games.
Well, you could if you bought one of them.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna.
You could buy them on Steam, and it'll be a lot cheaper.
Yeah, I could just do that, and then I can stream them from my upstairs computer, whether I have internet or not.
Right.
So it might just be selling me on games that I'm going to buy not on Stadia. Because that's how bad. Honestly, if the price was right, and the storefront was better, I could see myself spending money here.
Yeah, same here. That's been my take on it the whole time. And I have bought a couple of games on it because I had promotional Google credit to use somewhere. Right. But I'm not about to spend real money, especially not full price, on a lot of these games, and they rarely go on sale for any decent value.
Yeah, it's really frustrating to see how mishandled this is because I really, really would, again, if it was a very slick storefront and if it was priced more competitively, like new Cyberpunk, new Call of Duty, whatever, I get that you're going to have that for $60, but a lot of stuff on there is priced higher than it should be.
Right.
And I feel like there should be a universal pro subscriber discount to begin with.
Right.
Like if they're just like, hey, pro subscribers get 20% off of everything, and look, we added a search to the store function, I would be really tempted to spend some money on it.
They did announce a promotion with the Cyberpunk. If you pre-ordered Cyberpunk on there, I think they were giving you a free Chromecast or something, or a free Premiere kit or something.
Yeah, I think it's a Premiere kit, but unless it also comes with the GOG version, I'm just for a game that I know I can get rights DRM free with digital. I'm not gonna take that hit. Yeah. You know, like I do Steam because it's a necessary evil, not because I love Steam.
Right.
You know, it's functional and it's a necessary evil and it's cheap. Yeah. You know,
the only Stadia game that I paid for in real cash was Guilt, because it was a Stadia exclusive. I think it's still a Stadia exclusive.
Yeah, it's free for pro subscribers right now.
Yeah, now it's free. It wasn't at the time.
See, that's also kind of extra shitty.
Yeah.
That they're taking stuff that was previously on their storefront and then making it free.
Right. Well, they're cycling them out a lot like Game Pass does, a lot like PlayStation Plus.
The difference with
Gold.
Game Pass is I don't have to pay for some of the games on Game Pass.
Right.
Google. Anyway, that other than that and Gob's more Tetris Effect on Xbox, that's all I've really been playing.
Yeah, I'm really close to finishing that insane difficulty on Tetris Effect.
Yeah, you're miles ahead of me. I'll never get there,
man, it's rough to find a good 3-man team that can actually handle that.
Yeah.
So speaking of Game Pass stuff like Tetris Effect, I also downloaded that Toho game, Luna Nights.
I have no idea.
So it's a Metroidvania Toho game.
Okay.
And I know that because its description starts with the word Metroidvania.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Right in the description box, both on Game Pass and on Steam.
Search action.
They meant search action games. It is so blatantly just a Castlevania style ripoff, but with bullet hell.
Yeah.
And it is just brutally difficult. I am enjoying it. I went ahead and turned on Cheat Engine just so I could get past a couple of bosses that were kicking my ass.
Why not?
And it's good. It's got a good pace to it. I think I'm already pretty much at the end. So it's pretty short, but it's good. I imagine most of the length will be in the difficulty because it is just disgustingly difficult, especially on some of the bosses. Because you get very few health ups in the entire game, and gaining levels only seems to increase your strength a little bit. I haven't noticed any buff to defense, so it's rough, but it's neat. It's got a good soundtrack and the graphics are fine. It's Toho, so there's a bunch of young girls in maid outfits for no reason.
Right. Well, it's for a reason, Saturn.
Oh, my bad.
Let me tell you, there's a very specific reason and market for that particular outfit.
That's true.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. Also got in the Game & Watch. The Mario's Game & Watch.
I totally forgot I got mine in too.
Right. I played it for a few minutes and was like, that's neat, but I don't really like the controls on it, so it's going to go back on the shelf for now.
I guess we should kind of give some thoughts on it because really it's cool. It ain't $50 a cool.
No.
It's just not. And I'm very frustrated that the clock function is shitty.
Mm-hmm.
It looks cool, but one, there's no kickstand, which a lot of Game & Watches had, and there's no alarm function, so you can't use it as like a cute little alarm clock.
My Game & Watch absolutely did not have a kickstand.
I know some of them didn't they?
I have no idea. I didn't have one that did. And also my Game & Watch only had the watch function, the time function. in the score display area when you weren't playing a game.
Oh.
So it was a little teeny tiny font for your time. And most of the screen was just game. So it was
nice.
like game and watch.
It's nice. The screen is very nice.
It's gorgeous.
The games play well on it.
Yeah, they're fine. And the watch animations are adorable.
Yeah.
There's dozens of Easter eggs within the watch function.
Oh, yeah. But it's things like, look, a fire flower appeared.
Yeah, or, now Lakitu's here.
And it's not...
And so...
I'll say if they do a Zelda one, I'll buy the shit out of that.
Yeah, me too.
Oh,
but,
yeah, and I'll play it.
Oh, yeah, I'll play through all of Zelda 1 on there. My bigger issue with it is that it's... the one is $50, and two, that it's limited time, but at least they made it available. Like, you can actually get it in a store.
Yeah. I was pretty pissy because... it went live at Best Buy at 1 a.m. and Nintendo, being the shit company they are, wouldn't even tell us what retailers we should be watching.
Yeah.
And so I was mad that it went live at 1 a.m. and I went to bed because I was like, I'm not fucking doing this 1 a.m. credit card panic buying at Best Buy bullshit.
Yeah.
And I was like, if they want to make it available at my leisure, I'll buy it. And you know what? The next morning I got up, I had my coffee, I had my morning, and someone goes, hey, it's still on Amazon, and I went and bought it with 1-day shipping. So to their credit, they did make it pretty available.
And it's since sold out at Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
No, I did, I woke up that morning, because I didn't know, I was already way passed out by 1 o'clock, but I woke up that next morning at like 6:30, and somebody was like, hey, it's on Best Buy. And I looked and I was like, oh, it is still on Best Buy. Fuck it, I'll order one.
Yeah.
But
it's neat. If it's not $50 in neat, I've probably put in a couple hours on it. It's cool.
I also went into the streaming hole this week because I also got a Stadia trial, not through Google One. For some reason, they did not give me one with my Google One subscription, assholes. Mm-hmm. But I got a new Pixel phone, so it came with that. It came with 3 months of Stadia. So I thought I would try that again, and there are a lot more pro games now than there were the last time I tried it.
There's a good amount. I redeemed all the pro games. I have maybe 15 games on there, and many of them are games I've wanted to play.
Yeah, I think I have 20-something now between the ones that I had redeemed the previous time that I was a pro, and then this time. I think it's like 20-some-odd games now. But the thing is, there's not very many that I personally am interested in. Yeah. There's not a lot for me in there. Like, Celeste was there, but I was like, I've already played that at least twice now. And Panzer Dragoon was there, which was neat because Limited Run Games has still not shipped my copy of Panzer Dragoon that I bought like a year ago.
Yeah, I played some of that. Yeah.
So I did play some of that. That was nice. But other than that, I didn't see a ton that I was super interested in. I'm planning on giving it another shot. But before I could, Amazon messaged me to say, "Hey, you've been accepted into our elite trial for
you
Amazon
always
Luna.
Get the trials, and I never get them. I signed up for that Luna trial."
Here's the thing. Once they accept you and they're like, you're invited into our beta, that you have to pay $6 a month for and buy a $50 controller. Yeah.
Okay. I'll say this. You know what? I can't stand Amazon as a company, but they have the resources to make a much better streaming platform than even Google. Because people that don't know, the internet runs on Amazon. Not just the storefronts. I mean AWS, Amazon Web Services. So much of the internet runs on it. They've got the infrastructure for it. And you know what? To Amazon's credit, they might not make the prettiest interfaces, but they're usually at least relatively functional.
Well, let me tell you how ugly the interface is for Luna.
Oh God, how bad is it?
It's not great. It's all purple. That's clearly their theme is purple.
Well, I'm okay with that. Purple's good.
Yeah, that's fine. Purple. That's fine. But it's I don't know. It seems weird. Now I do appreciate the little icon, the icons they made for the individual games, because it looks kind of like the Steam Big Picture icons, except for there's some uniformity. Like it's the same like box art kind of thing they did, but they are all white logos with drop shadows in the center.
It gives you a little bit of that like mental ownership where you feel like you have this little game library even though you don't actually own anything.
Yeah, which is neat. But the actual interface looks like it's from GameFly from 20 years ago.
You know what? As long as it fucking functions, unlike Stadia, like usability-wise, would you say it's better or worse than Stadia?
It's about the same right now.
Oh, God.
Because your only options are my playlist, which you have to go and manually make out of the games, or all games. And I didn't.
Well, they don't have an all games on Stadia, so that's still
they do. You just have
they?
to look for it.
Oh, God.
Now,
it's an Easter egg.
Yeah. Now, I didn't notice if there was a search bar or not, but there's not enough games to justify it yet.
Yeah.
However, with Luna, you don't have to buy the games because you're paying for the service to stream them. And it comes with a rental fee, essentially, for all of the games.
Yes.
So I tried out a few games that I am familiar
That right there
enough.
makes it much more attractive to me.
Right. I'll give it that. So I tried out a handful of games that I am already familiar enough with that I felt that I could evaluate them. So I tried
assess it. Yeah.
I tried Wonderboy 3. I tried NES Contra, and I tried Cold Steel 3, just to give them all a little bit of a shot. And it is so obviously the Steam ports of those games. That it even still has some like press enter thrown in there from time to time.
Yeah.
And I specifically noticed with Cold Steel because it has a separate configuration program in addition to the EXE when you run it in Steam. And the configuration program lets you set your controls. And this doesn't have that. So you just get whatever it decided the default controls are, which aren't great.
So it sounds like it's definitely a little less seamless than Stadia.
Yeah. Also, I had it drop below 1080 several times while I was playing. And I've got a pretty fast internet connection, so that was a little disappointing that it would hiccup a little. The actual controls didn't seem to lag at all, so that was fine.
Yeah.
But I haven't gotten their controller yet.
I like to imagine that in the beta, maybe they're not using the full brunt of their server load.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's what it is.
But we won't know till it goes live.
Right.
Thankfully, you don't have to buy the games. You can just subscribe, and there it is. And it's $6, and if it sucks, then whatever.
Well, it's $6 while it's in beta.
True.
They said
have
that
they announced a final pricing?
No. Some asshole from Wedbush Securities says that he thinks it'll be either 15 or 20.
15, I think, is pretty good ballpark if they have a decent lineup and I don't have to spend any more money on it.
Yeah, hopefully they have more than the 30 games that they have now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Also, one last thing I wanted to mention. Finally, after many, many years of owning my 3DS, I've finished all of the Street Pass pictures on the Street Pass Me Plaza. I have all the pieces now, and I'm done, and they're not making any more, so that's it. I finally got them all.
How many puzzle pieces was that?
1,630 some odd, I think. Or maybe 1,650 something. It's a lot. Most of them I traded with my hacked 2DS, which I just gave all the pieces to.
Yeah, so you're a cheater.
Well, that's not. I live in America. There's not exactly people with 3DSs everywhere.
That's true. I am really proud. I have a complete Swap Note stationery collection on my 3DS, and I'm very proud of. So, which actually I haven't checked to make sure it transferred to my new 3DS, so I need to check that. So. Anyway, let's do some news.
Yes.
First up, DOSBox Pure announced a new fork of the DOSBox project that will provide better support for gaming and RetroArch. I will say DOSBox, as a frequent DOSBox user, it really does need to come into the current generation of emulation. I'm very excited for this project.
I love DOSBox. I love it the way that it is.
Too. Because, I don't love it the way that it is.
Because it is not just an emulation of those games, but it is a perfect emulation of my experience in that era. Because every time I power it on, I'm like, oh shit, I gotta mess with my auto exec to make this work correctly.
Yeah. Or I have to go mess with, I've edited my DOSBox config. Oh my God, I have to edit it heavily for every single game I play.
I finally at a point where I almost never have to edit it anymore. It just works now.
I also play a lot of action-oriented games, and that DOSBox does not do well with that. So sometimes you get things where, like, the horizontal axis on your mouse is, like, 80 times faster than the vertical one, or just all sorts of weird shit. I'm excited for DOSBox Pure.
Most of the games that I'm playing on it do not support the mouse. They are that old. So I do not have to deal with that.
I'm excited for this.
Yes.
Over 100 PS4 games give a warning that they might not function properly on the PS5 when you boot them up.
Huh.
Gee, Sony, it's almost like you suck.
Hey, you remember last week when Sony said that that there were only 4 or 5 PS4 games that didn't work right on the PS5?
Well, Saturn, they were technically correct because there are only 4 or 5 that they know for sure do not function. The rest they just think they don't function because they didn't test it.
Yeah, well, who has time for that?
Definitely not Sony, massive multinational corporation. Physicality Games shuts down and refunds all open pre-orders. This was a small batch, limited run games-esque company that seemed to have some decent business practices and decent products, but I guess just ran into some issues.
What was nice about them is they did open pre-orders, so it wasn't like we only have this many and you have 1 hour to order them or whatever. It was just, you have this many months. If you want it, order it, and then we'll make that many, and we won't ship them until enough is made for everybody. And unfortunately, they were not able to be profitable enough during their pre-order period to get the games out the door. So which is a shame. I did already get my refund though, so they are making things right on people.
Right. PC Duo, found in the wild, appears to be a U.S. variant of the PC Engine Duo R with NEC branding and compatibility with U.S. turbo chips and the U.S. Super System Card BIOS. Now, the Duo was never released here.
The Duo was released here. The Turbo Duo.
Turbo Duo, pardon me.
Yeah, but not the Duo R, the variant of the Duo.
Okay,
that was the later
the later one.
Yes. And this one, and also when the Turbo Duo was released in America, it had no NEC branding on the top. There was a NEC logo on the bottom because they still made it, but they didn't market it in the U.S. It was marketed by Turbo Technologies.
So this was the later Duo R that never came out here, but a prototype of it for U.S. markets.
Presumably a prototype. Nobody knows where the fuck this came from.
It's Analog's new prototype. They're like, where is it?
There's a video breakdown on YouTube, and I think it's that our friend Keith Courage was the one who posted it on there. That shows what the insides look like, and like the PCB is virtually identical to the Japanese Duo R, but like there's some weird little differences, like different chip manufacturers, and the board is a slightly different color and stuff. Is just very slightly off and strange, and definitely one of a kind.
Yeah.
Very weird.
Interesting. Very interesting. A study from Oxford University again points to a positive link between gaming and mental health. Yet again, murder simulators. Good for mental health, it turns out.
If there's like another 4,000 or 5,000 surveys like this, I think we might have to start taking it seriously.
Thankfully, the pearl clutchers seem to have moved on from video games for the most part.
For today.
And for now. Yeah, that does seem to be the case, but we'll see what the future holds.
Right.
Former Sega staffer John Bird reveals that a change in the North American Dreamcast caused several games to hard crash the console, and the bug wasn't found until days before the release of the console.
Yeah, he specifically mentioned Ready to Rumble Boxing. Apparently would just hard crash back to the BIOS screen arbitrarily, or just cause the system just completely crashed where you had to power it off.
So what was the fix? I mean, they couldn't just push a day one patch back then.
No, they just reprinted all those games.
Oh, because I in my head I was like, they recall the consoles and like reflash them, but yeah, I guess reprinting the games would be the easier route. I'm sure that was nice and cheap for Sega,
right? And all the third-party publishers involved.
Yeah.
You can apparently tell the working copies of those games because they all say new or hot on the front. And the original copies were largely recalled and mostly only shipped to early reviewers anyway.
And they were not new or hot.
They were not new or hot. They were shitty, old, Ready to Rumble boxing.
They said shitty or old on the front. That's how you get to it. Open world mods released for Doom and Doom 2. In case you don't like corridors,
right?
And you just want an open world.
I think what it was just all of the different levels connected into one
just
big world.
Smushed into one thing, yeah. That's pretty cool.
Right?
3DS gets one more firmware update. System stability hits record high. Nothing else has changed.
Yeah.
Nothing. It's just more stable.
And as long as you update Luma 3DS first, you can still install it on a hacked 3DS and it won't even care.
Excellent.
Billy Mitchell Watch.
A lawsuit alleges that Billy Mitchell and Walter Day fudged records in order to keep Twin Galaxies relevant. So now Billy's shit black hole orbit has sucked in Walter Day.
How dare they?
And of course it's easy to say after the fact, but it always seemed like Walter Day was a little sweet on Billy.
Yeah.
So I'm not shocked to find that he might have been in on some stuff.
Still disappointing.
It may just be the way that he was represented in media and on the internet, but he always kind of seemed like a sad old dude that sort of wanted Twin Galaxies to be what it used to be back in the 70s. Right. And I could, it's unfortunate to hear that he may have also been involved with notorious shithead Billy Mitchell. So that's unfortunate.
Sad times.
But fortunate for those of us that want Billy Mitchell to be brought to justice.
Yes.
One of these days. Company behind Switch's HD Rumble also produced the Rumble in the DualSense controller, shocking nobody.
Who would have
because
thought?
Of course, yeah. So, and I have been hearing good things about the DualSense. I've not been hearing specific things, just people going, it's great. So I'm glad that people are enjoying it.
I forgot to mention, I bought the new Xbox controller, and it's fine.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. It's a controller.
Official back-of-the-box review. It's fine. Retro Warriors.
No, I like the new texturing on the grips and on the trigger buttons. It's very nice. I can't use the share button for anything because I don't have a Xbox Series console.
Because you hate sharing.
Yeah, also because I hate sharing. The new D-pad looks bizarre, but works really well. Very happy with it.
NVIDIA released GeForce Now as a web service to skirt around Apple's iOS restrictions and has announced GOG integration. The first two games up are going to be Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk. Shocking nobody.
Right. I did test that on my iPad, and since I was already testing every fucking streaming service in the world this week, and man, GeForce Now has gotten way worse than the last time I tried it.
Yeah, it's bad.
I had to wait an hour to play a game. Now, granted, I'm not paying them for their service, so I get that. But I don't pay Google for a service either, and I can still play Stadia games instantly if I've purchased them.
True.
But I had to wait an hour, and then it just kind of ran like shit.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Also, Stadia is beginning their iOS web app test.
Yeah.
I don't know what these companies are going to do when Apple gets pissy and locks it all down in a few months.
I imagine that's the next step.
What their plan is. Hitman developer IO Interactive announces a new James Bond game.
Neat.
Don't get your hopes up. There's been a lot of James Bond games since GoldenEye. Yeah. None of them have been as good. So
I heard good things about Nightfire. I remember people liked that.
Yeah, a lot of people lied about that game. Huge Capcom leak shows upcoming titles through 2024, including Street Fighter 6, Rockman Match, RE4 Remake, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Onimusha New York, what? And new Resident Evil Outbreak or Remake, Final Fight Remake, Power Stone Remake, new Captain Commando, and Super Street Fighter 6 1 year after Street Fighter 6, and Ultra Street Fighter 6 to release 1 year after that.
Yeah.
And then presumably Ultra Street Fighter 6 Super Turbo Mega Hyper Fighting Arcade Edition Deluxe, but is not actually deluxe and doesn't include all the deluxe content. Capcom.
Well, that's too far out on their release calendar. They couldn't show that yet.
I'm several of these I'm very much expect. Other ones I'm excited about. New Captain Commando is exciting to me. I need more babies in mech suits in my life.
I'm sad about how it came around because if people weren't following the story, basically it was Capcom was infiltrated and somebody installed ransomware on a bunch of their machines.
Yeah, that's no bueno.
And instead of paying the ransom, they just wiped all their machines and went back to an earlier revision, and the assholes that hacked into them thus released all this information.
Yeah. So all this stuff is probably coming out later than 2024 now.
Yeah, possibly.
Nintendo shuts down a major Smash Brothers Melee online tournament with a cease and desist order because they are giant babies.
Yeah,
Fuck you, Nintendo.
pretty much. And that's so shitty because these guys were using a new fork of Dolphin. I don't remember what it's called, but apparently
it's called Slippy. I think.
Slippy. Okay, yeah, and it has much better netcode, and they were going to be finally like showing it off on a wide scale to show how impressive it could handle even at a tournament
Melee
level.
tournament during a pandemic. They're
Right?
just trying to get on with their lives and play some video games, and
Nope.
Nintendo has to swoop in and give them a C and D. But you only get one C and D, and you have to stand in line at midnight. We're not going to tell you which place you have to go to get it.
Yeah, and if you don't use it by March 31st, it just disappears.
Bethesda cancels the physical release of Doom Eternal, opting for digital only.
On
I don't
Switch.
believe they gave, or on Switch, pardon me. Yeah, obviously it's out physical
Yeah,
on other platforms already. I'm flabbergasted as to how they're going to make this game run on the Switch to begin with.
Who the hell knows? But I've been hearing that they might already have it running on there.
Like, my Xbox acts like it's about to just melt running Doom Eternal. The Internet Archive announced it will be preserving Flash games. And despite what you may think, it's not all just porn games. There are some really good Flash games. I'm excited about this.
Alien Hominid,
Yep.
that's the one.
And then all those porn games.
yeah, also a lot of porn games.
Customers reporting getting toys, appliances, and cat food instead of PlayStation 5s from Amazon, presumably due to thieves.
Yeah, that's a shame.
But obviously Amazon has not commented.
Right.
And finally, the 2003 title 13 outsold its new remake during the remake's release week, possibly on account of the remake of 13 being allegedly turds.
Have you looked at the comparison pictures?
No. How
Oh
bad
my
is
god! So the original was this really neat cell shaded game, right?
it? Yeah.
And it had a very distinctive, like comic booky art style. And the new game just kind of looks like Fortnite.
Thanks, guys.
Ubisoft.
Of course. Fuck you, Ubisoft. Jesus Christ.
I assume
go
they did the
pirate that
remake.
game.
They did the original. I assume they also did the remake.
I assume they do everything bad. So, if something bad happens in my life, I'm like, Ubisoft! I assume either Ubisoft or Billy Mitchell did it. That's
Right.
my general consensus.
It's a good bet.
Let's get into the topic at hand. This week we're talking Sega arcade ports. If that's not vague enough for you, I don't know what is. As far as the synopsis, you may know Sega from their arcade hits.
Yes.
I don't, but you may. And usually they did a great job translating them to home consoles.
What is a Daytona?
We just kind of want to track those chronologically and talk about the evolution of Sega's arcade ports because it's fun and we like it. First up, some listener feedback. Elk Neodaffs writes in, I remember playing Outrun at my local arcade, a game that left me absolutely mesmerized. The speed, the adrenaline, the music. The soul of Outrun lives on in its music, having inspired an entire aesthetic built upon the neon lights and Ray-Ban sunglasses, and I'm absolutely here for it.
For years, I thought Outrun was a ripoff of Rad Racer because my life was sad, apparently.
Why didn't they just call it Less Rad Racer? God.
Just call it Bad Racer.
Rygar Stargong writes in, I want to talk about one game in particular that triggers a really warm, fuzzy memory for me, Altered Beast. In 1989, I was Christmas shopping with my parents at the local mall, and while walking by the arcade, an Altered Beast cabinet caught my eye. I begged for a quarter and got one, but the line for the machine was too long. A little further down the mall, there was a KB toy store with a Genesis kiosk out front, and wouldn't you know it, they were running Altered Beast on it. I got to play while my parents shopped for gifts. As a kid obsessed with werewolves, it was pure Christmas magic. That was a weird sentence. Yes, it was.
Yeah.
But you know what? A lot of kids were obsessed with werewolves in the late 80s and early to mid 90s. Werewolves had a weird renaissance in that area.
It was a weird time.
I'm not sure why. I think it's just because we didn't have the internet, so we didn't know what was supposed to be cool. So we just made stuff up. We're like, werewolves. It's werewolves now.
I think it's because of the Monster Squad.
Yeah, I think the Monster Squad definitely brought
Yeah.
the universal monsters to a new generation.
Also, because Wolfman had nards and the others didn't.
TamChan87 writes in, I adore Sega arcades. It is my dream to one day own a Sega Astro City arcade cab. Perhaps my favorite Sega arcade game and arcade port has to be Crazy Taxi. It wasn't until my Dreamcast-obsessed friend finally got his European Dreamcast that we booted up Crazy Taxi and that music started playing. Pablo, edit in just the yeah, yeah, yeah bit of All I Want.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, no, okay, no one gets to talk to Pablo but us. This is a You remember that scene in like Wayne's World where he's like, "Hey, only me and Garth get to talk to the camera."
Right.
That's what I feel like right now. I'm sad I didn't get to try the original arcade game, but good Lord, we put in hours in the Dreamcast version. I think my hair spiked and frosted itself as a byproduct of playing this game. It just Guy Fieri'd you up for sure. Initial thoughts. I didn't own a Genesis until
I
basically...
love Guy Fieri as a verb.
Yeah, you know, when you just get Guy Fieri'd. You know?
I went down to the Stop and Slop, and I just got Guy Fieri'd in the back.
The Stop and Slop. Is it for pigs or people? I don't know.
Who knows? We'll have to wait till
and I still can't tell.
Have to wait till he does an episode of his TV show on it.
I didn't own a Genesis until basically the Dreamcast was out, and I didn't own a Dreamcast until like 3 years ago. I never heard of the Sega Saturn, and I thought people were lying when they told me about the 32X. I was like, that's the dumbest sounding thing I've ever heard in my life. So I'm really not the man to ask about Sega arcade games. I've played a lot of Sega's home games, but I missed Sega in the arcade. I still, every now and then when I hit arcades, they still have Sega arcade games, and I will play them. But I would say the classic Sega arcade titles were not, it just wasn't in my wheelhouse. But I will say, as Nintendo continues to push me away in recent times, I do find the warm, welcoming arms of Sega waiting for me with their great arcade games that I've been discovering and enjoying, and their tendency to make their products, you know, like available for purchase.
Right.
That I can buy and then play, and then they're not going to take them away from me, Nintendo.
And they make good ports of them.
Really, I think this is just a spite episode. I think I'm just mad at Nintendo, and I'm like, anything Sega. Talk about anything from... I don't care what it is. Even though Nintendo doesn't give a shit about Sega as a competitor
Not anymore, no. They've embraced them as a partner. They even go to the Olympics together.
Yeah, Saturn, what is your initial run-ins with Sega arcade games and ports?
I did play, a handful of them in the arcade back in the day, especially stuff like Shinobi and Afterburner, Space Harrier, a lot of those early games, Golden Axe. And I remember the first time that we saw Shinobi on NES, we just thought that was the weirdest shit. And then we rent it, and it's got that weird-ass cartridge, because it was Tengen. Mm-hmm. And we played it, and it wasn't even Shinobi. So it was just a really weird experience. Yeah. So when the Genesis came around and one of my neighbors got it, it was very impressive to see what appeared to be perfectly accurate ports of some of those games on the Genesis.
Yeah. Well, Saturn, why don't you take us through the scope? Yeah. And because you're also old, maybe just like a general state of arcade ports in the 80s.
Thanks.
Because I feel like these days people don't fully understand or appreciate the art of the arcade port and how big of a deal arcade ports were.
Yeah. So we don't want to go super in depth and individually review just hundreds of games. That doesn't make sense, and we would be here for the next week.
To be fair, that's kind of exactly the thesis of our show, and we have done it hundreds of times.
Quiet time. Well, we don't want to do it all in one episode anyway.
Right. No, I have to sleep eventually.
Right. One of us has to sleep eventually. We trade off. So basically we're just going to give an overview of how Sega handled bringing their arcade games to home markets over the years, how that progressed. And we are going to focus in on a couple of those games that look interesting. As mentioned, we did the Downports episode a few episodes ago now. I have no perception of time anymore, so I don't remember how many episodes ago it was.
It was either a week or 80 years ago.
It was somewhere in there.
In between, and I don't know.
It was between a week and 80 years ago. we did the downports episode.
It's like days last for years and months take a second. I don't know what's happening.
It's bizarre. This whole year has been a friggin' time warp.
Yeah.
But yeah, arcade games didn't always get very good home ports, and the 8-bit and early 16-bit era were notorious for some iffy translations. When the NES came out, especially when the Famicom came out in Japan, it was well known for having very accurate ports of a lot of Nintendo's arcade games, like Donkey Kong or Ice Climber or Urban Champion. You know, these really impressive, powerful games.
The classic, well-remembered Nintendo arcade games. Well, I guess Donkey Kong kind of is.
Yeah, Donkey Kong is. But also it could bring home a lot of other arcade games like Pac-Man in a much more faithful format than whatever Atari vomited out a couple of years earlier.
Decent Galaga port on that as well.
Yeah, good Galaga on there. Arkanoid got a really good port on the NES.
Yeah. Came with they even had the little controller for it, the Arkanoid controller.
And I'm so sad I don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
But then arcades obviously kept evolving and kept getting better and better. And the NES was not getting better.
I do like to imagine some executive somewhere like, what do you mean you made better video games? We already made video games. Why are you making them better? It's expensive.
and you know, at the time that the NES was around, there was also the Sega Mark II, the Master System, and it had some pretty decent ports of a lot of Sega's games. They weren't always perfect, but there were some that were pretty impressive, better than the NES ports of those same games. But even then, it struggled by the time the Genesis came around to keep up to what Sega was putting out in the arcades.
Right. I do want to mention Atari's lawsuit because it does come up a couple times in this episode. So just to give background on it, and I'm just going to take this quote directly from the Game Developer Research Institute, which is a great resource that I'd never been on. It's a cool website. Yeah. In October 1993, Atari Corp. filed a lawsuit against Sega of America alleging infringement of a 1984 patent involving, quote, horizontal scrolling on a video display.
How bullshit is that patent?
The Tramiel family, being the patent trolls, Tramiel, those people,
Jack Tramiel's family,
sought a preliminary injunction that would have halted the manufacture, use, and sale of Genesis and Game Gear hardware and software. The court found that the harm caused to Sega, retailers, developers, and peripheral manufacturers by this injunction would have likely outweighed whatever harm had been done to Atari, so the motion was denied. Nevertheless, a settlement was reached in September 1994 between both parties. Sega would acquire $40 million of stock in Atari and would also pay Atari $50 million for a license to use over 70 patents issued between 1977 and 1984. And these companies agreed to cross-license up to 5 games per year through the year 2001.
Yeah.
They also agreed to drop all claims against each other.
So Sega is going to be putting 5 Sega games on an Atari console every year from 94 to 2001.
Remind me, which Atari console was out in 2001? I can't...
was the flashback around yet?
I hope not. What do you mean we have to put Sonic the Hedgehog on the flashback? Fuck! But this resulted in Sega developing several games for the Atari Jaguar, which is the specifically the ports that come up in our episode. But none of them ever came out.
Nope, they never released.
So I'm guessing they gave them to Atari like, here's some games according to a court order, and Atari just like played them and was like, haha, you suck, and just never released them.
No, I think what happened was Atari was like, we can barely keep the doors open. And they were already pretty much pulling the Jaguar from shelves by that point.
After that $50 million in licensing and $40 million of stock infusion in 1993, they couldn't fucking figure anything out.
Yeah, it's Atari. We covered this in a different episode.
Well,
Jack Tramiel managed to completely destroy that company before they sold it to Hasbro.
I did some research for most of these games that we're going to cover, but Saturn, I'm just going to let you take it away, and I'll just chime in with my tidbits. from time to time.
So I wanted to start with the really early shit, and we're just going to rush through this because this isn't the important stuff.
Right. So deep dive on the SG-1000 is
exactly. Atari stuff. Sega was actually an unlicensed publisher of Atari games. They were putting out their own cartridges during that time. They didn't put many of their own games out. I noticed Congo Bongo and Pingu came out, but I don't even know if Sega published either of them. Mm-hmm. However, Sega did publish Midway's Tapper and Spy Hunter on the Atari 2600. And Sega carts look weird for the Atari. If you can find a picture,
I've never even seen a Sega Atari. That sounds weird.
Yeah, it was really weird looking cartridges. And then, of course, Sega didn't put out games on the NES themselves, but Tengen and Sunsoft, and I think some other companies as well, did publish some of Sega's games on the NES. The ones that I immediately was able to remember: Shinobi, Fantasy Zone, Space Harrier, Afterburner, and Alien Syndrome. All got NES ports. Obviously, Sega did port their stuff to the Master System. And a lot of them were closer to the arcade version than the NES version. Not all of them were completely accurate, but they're usually more than playable. As far as Master System's games go, a lot of them were some of the better games on the system, too. The ones that I was able to draw that were arcade ports, you got Outrun as well as Outrun 3D. You got Shoplifter, which isn't even originally a Sega game, but they did handle the arcade version.
Yeah, the arcade Shoplifter was a remake of Dan Gorlin's 1982 Apple II game of the same name, and it did get it saw a Famicom release, but there was no Western release of Shoplifter on.
Now, I'm curious if the Famicom release was a port of the Apple II game or if it was a down port of the arcade game.
I want to say it was a downport of the arcade game, but I'm not sure on that. It could go either way.
Yeah, if it was Famicom and not NES, I have to think it's based on the arcade game. But
I would imagine that.
Obviously, we got Fantasy Zone on Master System, and that was a good port.
And the Master System port is pretty good.
Yeah, not perfect, but it's pretty good.
I'd take it over the NES version.
Yeah.
For sure.
Which NES version? Because Tengen and Sunsoft both released NES versions of Fantasy Zone.
Either of them, really. My only real complaint is that the Sega Master System version looks very pastel.
Yeah.
Like it almost looks like an old microcomputer game, which is kind of weird.
Right.
But then also, Fantasy Zone 2 was originally on Sega Master System in '87, and then ported from the Master System to the arcades.
It's a backwards port.
Yeah, it's an up port.
Yeah.
And it was the System E version in February 1988, and the System E is basically just Master System hardware in an arcade machine.
Sega had a habit of that, of just releasing arcade machines that were just their home console hardware.
Yeah.
They did the same thing for the Saturn and the Dreamcast. I have to assume they must have released a Genesis or Mega Drive based arcade machine.
Oh, they did. I think I have it noted later on.
That's good. Also got Hang On. Which I've never been a particular fan of Hang On.
I really like Super Hang On, but the original one is a little dated for me.
Yeah.
This one was released as a compilation cart with either Astro Warrior or Safari Hunt, and it was the pack-in game for the Master System.
There were so many different pack-in games for the Master System.
Well, one of the pack-in games for the Master System, I should say. Well, technically two of the pack-in games for the Master System.
Right.
And this is critically, Hang On was a very celebrated port.
Yeah.
People complained about the animation, and some stuff was missing, like when you crashed, that animation was missing.
Right.
But allegedly a very complete version and very well received version.
Yeah, I don't remember if the Master System of Outrun has the crash animation from the arcade, but that was always the best part about Outrun.
I played a bit of it, and I want to say it didn't, because I crashed once or twice, but my car didn't do the flippy flip and throw my girlfriend out of it.
Right, which is the best part of the game.
But then I didn't crash super hard, and I couldn't remember if you didn't always flip.
No, you don't always flip.
Okay, so I might have just not done
crashed enough.
Yeah, that was. I might just be too good at Outrun to get the.
That was the thing. I always thought that Outrun was a Rad Racer clone, but then when I'd play it, I'd be like, "But this is the better one because you can flip around and your girlfriend falls out of the car."
I do like that we all assume it's his girlfriend. Could be his sister, his mom, his aunt.
It could be his wife. The guy could be married.
Could just be a hitchhiker he picked up.
Right. You can go cruising around the coast on my Ferrari.
Sure, why not?
I'm not doing anything today, and I don't know where my clothes are.
I'm already hitchhiking in a miniskirt.
Right.
Might as well.
Oh, was she in a miniskirt? I thought she was in a swimsuit.
Was she? I don't remember.
I don't remember. Anyway,
I'm not a huge outrun guy. Like I play it and I'm like, this is fun for 10 minutes.
Right.
And then I just go listen to the soundtrack and forget about the game.
I play Outrun for 5 minutes, then I go back to Rad Racer just because that was my childhood.
Yeah.
We got Space Harrier, which is fine.
It's surprising how well they were able to port Space Harrier to other systems.
They did such a poor job. Well, they didn't, but the companies that did port it to the NES did such a poor job of porting it. Really, they should have gotten Square involved because 3D World Runner is the most blatant Space Harrier clone, and it's done really well on the NES.
I feel like 3D World Runner runs better than Sega Master System Space Harrier.
Yeah, it's a great Space Harrier clone.
The Sega Master System port was also handled by Mutsuhiro Juji and Yuji Naka, and Yu Suzuki had no involvement with that port whatsoever. And it added a final boss and an ending cutscene that would be used in later ports of the game would include these. This is where they came up the first time, was Sega Master System port. And it was the first 2 megabit cartridge for the Sega Master System. And
I believe during this era, Sega was still compartmentalizing their arcade team and their home console team. So I'm not surprised that Yu Suzuki wouldn't have been involved directly.
Right.
Obviously we have Wonderboy, which got a competent port on every possible console available at the time.
Yeah, the SG-1000 port was a full remake of the game since the hardware couldn't handle the arcade version.
Makes sense.
This port also adds 2 areas for a total of 9 compared to the arcade version's 7. That is not counting the secret area that you get for collecting all the dolls. And graphics themselves were reportedly taken directly from the arcade game.
I didn't list it, but Wonderboy and Monsterland also got a good Master System port that I would say is better than the arcade game in a lot of ways. And it also adds in some levels that weren't in the arcade version.
Yeah.
We got Afterburner, which also got a pretty good port.
I played some of this port as well, and it's surprisingly good for a Master System game. It does have unlimited missiles, which is nice.
It's weird when you start playing actual Sega branded Master System games, you find all of these quality titles.
Yeah, it's amazing. Oddly enough, Computer Gaming World has one of the most prominent reviews of the Sega Master System port of Afterburner, as well as the PC port, and they allege that the Master System version is superior to the later PC version of Afterburner.
Well, I can believe that. It is Sega game on Sega hardware.
Yeah.
They probably put in a little
PC
more effort.
ports were still shitty in that era, so not totally shocking.
What, the DOS version?
I know. Who would have thought that it's bad?
We had Alien Syndrome, which also somehow found its way onto every fucking console and computer of that era.
Of all of the critical reviews I read for Alien Syndrome, I want everyone to know that it was poorly received by Dragon Magazine, of all places. Dragon Magazine did not like Alien Syndrome at all. I don't know what they were doing reviewing a sci-fi video game in a magazine about a fantasy tabletop role-playing game.
It's not the first time we have encountered Dragon Magazine reviewing video games on this show.
No, I have a lot of issues of Dragon, and sometimes you open it. Sometimes you open it and it's like, oh, new rogue subclass, or here's some story, here's some cool adventure hooks, and then it's just like, here's a review of a FM Towns Marty controller peripheral, and you're like, why?
Right.
Did you just have 4 pages to fill and you just grabbed a random guy? Like, what happened?
I remember one time I bought a copy of Wizard magazine. You remember that magazine that always had the comic book price chart in there?
I loved Wizard.
And I was like, well, let's see what's going on in the world of comics. And I open it up to a random page and it's a review of the Maniac Mansion TV show on the Family Channel. So maybe magazines just operated differently.
Magazines were everything back in the day. Like, I feel like compared to now, media is so honed that if we look back, basically everything just feels like general lifestyle media, just all of it.
Dragon, Wizard, People, they're all just general lifestyle magazines. Anyway. I have to mention Columns. And we got Shinobi, Altered Beast, Zaxxon, Thunderblade. There's just a shit ton of Master System games.
The Shinobi was one of the games that was part of the lawsuit. They had to develop an Atari Jaguar version. And this is and I've noticed this as a trend in Sega home ports of arcade games is that they add quality of life features that make them better games. Like Shinobi adds a health bar, so there's no more one-hit kills. Hostages are optional, but you can use them to unlock the bonus stages. And there's a few other little gameplay tweaks, in stuff like Afterburner, adding unlimited missiles. Sega was not only porting, definitely down ports, but still very good versions of their arcade games to home console. But they were doing what a lot of other companies refused to do with their home ports of arcade games and making them better, more playable with more quality of life features.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that when we were doing the downports episode is one of the things I was really interested in, because a lot of arcade games got some quality of life improvements when they came home, or at the very least gave you access to the dip switches, which is like a quality of life increase if you were used to playing on the hardest difficulty at 50 cents a play. And Sega is definitely one of those companies that always seem to add some stuff. Not always, but most of the time added some stuff.
Right. The Altered Beast Master System port is it was the designer Makoto Uchida was not involved with it. Like you're saying, they still compartmentalized their teams,
right?
But did get to advise on a lot of aspects of the Master System port, which I feel like I've played, and it was Altered Beast.
Yeah, it plays pretty well for Altered Beast. I would say it plays better than the Turbo CD version of Altered Beast. And that's saying something, because the Master System should not be better than the Turbo CD at anything.
I feel like a lot of Turbo games, they just were like, what do we do with all this extra power in Red Book audio? And they were like, we don't know. Just figure something out. And then we got like Ninja Gaiden.
I feel like whoever was making the Turbo CD port of Altered Beast decided that all of the RAM should go towards the Red Book audio. And it wasn't until like they published the game that somebody was like, we forgot to leave some of that RAM alone for, scrolling.
Did they at least not make the bad guy sound like Elmer Fudd's dumber cousin?
No, it still sounds like that.
God dang it.
Wow, from the grave.
Let's move on to the Genesis.
I do want to take special note of Zaxxon, just because that's the closest Sega has ever gotten to porting Zaxxon to one of their own consoles. And it wasn't even Zaxxon. It was Zaxxon 3D. It was like a sequel. The original Zaxxon has been ported to a shit ton of platforms, but never any of Sega's platforms, which is weird.
To kind of delineate things here, the Sega Master System, a lot of not even a lot, basically all of these ports they're down ports. They are downgraded.
They're recreations of those games.
Visually and audio-wise are downgrades of these games. But in many ways, like we said, gameplay was either intact or sometimes improved. With these ports. So I don't even know that downport would even be a necessarily accurate word across the board.
Right. And some of them...
I could absolutely see someone preferring some of these ports to maybe ones that didn't get later Genesis ports.
Right.
But preferring them to the arcade versions.
But yeah, some of them, like the Wonderboy games, look as good as the arcade games too, which is nice.
Yeah. Let's talk Genesis.
Yeah, so the Genesis is where it really gets interesting, because that's where you start to see the games that look like their arcade counterpart almost identically, and not just like the early 8-bit arcade games. Like, this is games that were relevant at that time, and they looked great. And in the West here in North America, the launch games for the system, Altered Beast, which I believe was a pack-in, Golden Axe, and Space Harrier 2, all are near arcade perfect ports.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you were to play them immediate back to back, you could tell.
Yeah, sure.
But if you were playing them a week apart and you somehow didn't know that this one's playing on a Genesis and this one is a giant arcade machine in my house, you might be hard pressed to tell the difference. In keeping with their previous theme, Golden Axe adds a boss battle, a level, dual mode, and a new ending.
Yeah, and then they later reported at least Golden Axe, I want to say Altered Beast as well, to the Sega CD as part of a compilation disc, and they added Red Book audio on top of all that. And I think they cut out some features. If I remember right, Golden Axe on Sega CD doesn't support multiplayer anymore.
Weird.
Or something weird like that. It was something bizarre that they just removed, but otherwise it's identical, so it's still a very good port.
But and this is them continuing this trend of improving their home games. Which I feel like, now that I'm mentioning it a second time, might sound kind of weird to a lot of people. Like, of course, your later versions of your game are going to be better. That's the trend now.
Yeah,
wasn't then.
Right, but like you mentioned, if you're looking at them side by side, you might be able to tell the difference between these and the arcade games. But when you think about that time period, the late 80s, that was unheard of for you even be close to the arcade game for current arcade titles. The fact that it looked that good and was that close to the arcade game was incredibly impressive. Yeah. And I'm sure that sold more than a few Genesis systems early on.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
So beyond those launch titles, the rest of these I just put in alphabetical order, so there's no continuity
rhyme or
here.
reason.
Yeah.
You've got
go ahead.
Alien Storm, which was another one of the Atari Jaguar games.
the Atari Jaguar vaporware games.
And Bonanza Brothers was the one that used Sega's System 24 board.
So that must be the Mega Drive board.
I believe that was their Mega Drive
that makes sense.
Oriented hardware, and that was the same board used by Gain Ground, which the Genesis version of Gain Ground adds 10 more levels than the arcade version.
Did M2 ever make a Sega Ages port of Bonanza Brothers?
Oh, I don't know that. I would have to look that
I need to look that up. Because now that I'm looking through this list, I'm like, man, I haven't played Bonanza Brothers in fucking forever.
Yeah,
play some Bonanza. Anyway,
yeah.
We got Columns, which was Columns.
It's Columns.
I've never been a fan of Columns.
I always just called it not Tetris.
It's way worse than not Tetris. Dr. Mario is not Tetris.
I'd play Columns before I'd play Dr. Mario every day of the week. Oh yeah, especially the later Columns. Is column.
I've never actually played beyond the first Columns game, just because I was so disappointed with
the
first
later ones
one.
are good.
Oh, are they?
I'll take Columns over Dr. Mario. I'm on record as being a Dr. Mario hater, though. I try. I just don't love it.
I would play Dr. Mario or Puyo Puyo before I play Columns.
Yeah, I wouldn't take Puyo over Columns either. Whatever part of your brain you need to work Puyo, I don't have. It's missing. It's been removed from my brain. I fried it watching too many bad movies in the 90s. I don't know.
Right.
It's gone. I cannot structure objects in the way they want me to.
I'm not going to pretend to be good at Puyo because I'm not, but I've figured it out now.
Yeah. No, I can't get there. I tried.
I didn't list that because Sega didn't own Compile yet during this time. So even though there was a Puyo Puyo port on the Genesis, it was not a Sega game yet.
Yeah. What is eSWAT?
eSWAT, if I remember
right.
Just
bad narc?
Kinda. I haven't played eSWAT since the early 90s, so I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on that.
Okay.
But I do remember hearing that it was a good port. Okay. Flicky, which is a good port, because I enjoy playing Flicky.
The Japanese version was exclusive to the Sega Mega Net.
And that's the alternative to the Sega channel, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
I believe so. I don't know if it was available on the Sega channel.
I don't know.
I'm not sure on that one.
I've only played it on an emulator, so I can't speak to that.
Yeah.
You got G-Lock, which I always thought was the dumbest name ever back in the 90s.
It is, and I didn't know that G-Lock was a spin-off of Afterburner. I mean, it makes sense, obviously, but when Afterburner is already just a game about generic jets that doesn't really have any story, making another game about jets, how is it really a spin-off?
G-Lock jets? I thought it was helicopters for some reason.
Whichever aerial object it is. Whatever. Yeah, I think G-Lock, is it?
I don't remember now.
I I don't know either. We're doing terrible. Let's move on. We already mentioned Gain Ground. Let's talk about the
games
Genesis,
we did play.
The Genesis port of Outrun.
Outrun is an excellent port. Very impressed with
it's
that.
It's
great. All the Shinobi games on Genesis were excellent.
Yes.
Famously, there was that one where they had to later edit out Spider-Man. But
they did put the Spider-Man in there.
They did take out the Spider-Man.
I assume on accident.
No, because Batman's also in there.
Oh, yeah, he is in there, isn't he?
Yeah.
Nobody cared. No, so DC was less litigious in this era.
No, they also took out Batman later, too.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah. In Spider-Man, they had licensed because Sega had also released a Spider-Man game in that era. So they officially licensed Spider-Man. They did not license Batman, to my knowledge. And then the later reprints.
Look, you can't trademark a guy that looks like a bat. They did. You can. They did.
The later versions just recolored both of those characters so that they didn't look like the official
All they had
versions.
to do was add a line of dialogue that makes a joke about them, and then it's covered under parody law.
Yeah, it's totally fine then.
That's the rule.
Right? But no, they're all good. All the Shinobi games on the console are good.
I want to talk about Super Hang-On.
Yeah?
Because, man, I played a shitload of Super Hang-On. It was on the Sega 6-pack, which if you don't have the Sega 6-pack, what a great 6-pack of games. For many years, I owned the Sega 6-pack, Sonic. Which Sonic is on the 6-pack? Just the first one?
I think it's just the first one.
I owned the 6-pack, Sonic 2 and 3, and Sonic and Knuckles, and that was my entire Genesis library and my entire exposure to the Genesis until I was in my, late 20s, probably. Until, I met you.
So no Castlevania Bloodlines or Contra Hardcore.
No, my first time playing Bloodlines was since we've started the show.
Damn, that's so sad.
Yeah, so I'm playing Shining Force for the first time in my life ever.
It's so good.
I'm honestly, you feel bad for me, but I'm very excited that there's so many great Sega games that I have no fucking idea about. It's the Wild West. It's like being a kid again.
Yeah.
And they're all available for purchase. And they're not limited. Yeah. And I don't have to pay a yearly subscription fee to Nintendo of America to have access to them.
No, you just go on Steam and you pay $1.40 per game when they're on sale.
They just had a sale and I just gave them $9 and they were like, here's everything we've ever put on it. And I was like, thanks.
Yeah.
It's just great.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't play those. I just play them in an emulator or on my Genesis Mini, but I've paid for them.
Yes.
They're legally mine. They can't stop me.
And many of them were on the Genesis Mini anyway.
Super Hang-On was a blast. That was a fun game, and man, that looked... I remember even the fact I had a Genesis so late, but it looked so good.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, that was a good-looking game.
And Super Monaco GP, which is a sequel to a really old Sega arcade game, because Monaco GP was an early 80s, earliest racing game you can imagine in the arcades kind of game. And Super Monaco was much more refined. It was more Outrun style. But the thing that I remember the most about Super Monaco, because we rented it a handful of times, and then it was later on that Sega CD compilation, is the title screen has this digitized bikini model holding the trophy. And my brother would always be like, wait, no, don't hit start yet. Okay, you can start the game.
That's so skeevy, but it's funny because you were kids.
Right. Yeah, he was maybe 14. But yeah, I'll always remember the poor title screen Super Monaco girl. But
I was wondering why when we were talking about this episode, you name dropped Super Monaco GP 5 times, and I was like, "What is this deal with Super Monaco GP?"
It's a fine game too. It's an alright game. But more than the game being all right, I'll always remember the poor bikini girl on the title screen that my brother would just ogle, and she was the full size of the screen in height and proper proportion. It wasn't cartoony character. So props on Sega for getting my brother's attention with your animation. And then the two that we have to mention last, just because these were the very late ports on the Genesis, Virtua Racing and Virtua Fighter 2.
Virtua Racing, as we all know, and I just learned this week, utilized the Sega Virtua processor, aptly named, which means costly additional hardware on the cartridge. The game was priced at $100 in North America and £70 sterling in the Queen's England. The Virtua processor was able to render 9,000 polygons per second and does not work on the Genesis Model 3 or with a 32X and sucks.
Yeah.
It is not a fun game.
It's not a great port. Like, for the Genesis, it's a really impressive port.
Oh, yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah.
It's very impressive.
And I remember Sega making a huge deal. They were like, this new SVP, it's totally going to compete with the Super FX chip, and the Genesis is going to have another 3 years of life. And they had already announced the 32X, and I think they had maybe already announced the Saturn. And so nobody really cared. And the 32X port of Virtua Racing is better anyway. So if you had a 32X, you don't care that the overpriced Genesis port doesn't work on your 32X.
Yeah. Virtua Racing is the video game equivalent of if someone drew like a perfect, lifelike picture of a butthole. You're like, I'm very impressed that you were even able to do that.
Yeah.
Kudos. I don't want to look at it, though.
Now, I have met several Virtua Racing super fans. Like people that just love the game.
I've only ever played the Genesis port, and it is so slow and plodding, and it just feels. Again, I played it like for the first time a few years ago.
Now, the people that I know that love the game also love the Genesis port. And
so I could just be a big wrongie, and I just don't get it.
and usually it's more that they just like those early polygonal. I'm trying to remember the name of the Atari one that was even before this. It was a Hard Drive-In, I think. But that those early polygonal racing games, and Virtua Racing was the most impressive of those, because this is when we were moving away from early polygonal to properly rendered polygonal stuff.
Right.
And the 32X version was better. The arcade version was better. And I think there was a Saturn port as well that was better. But for the Genesis, it was just so impressive they could play it without having to upgrade their technology.
Right.
That people were just really impressed with it. And if I remember right, it even got pretty good reviews at the time too, just because of what it could handle on the Genesis. I personally have a hard time going back to it, just because it is rough. But
Virtua Fighter 2 is not Virtua Fighter 2.
Yeah, I don't even know why they called it that.
It is a game that they named Virtua Fighter 2, and then someone went, yeah, we're going to figure out how to port it like we did with Virtua Racing. And then someone else went, we literally can't. Like, I know you think we can because we said we couldn't do it before, and then we did do it. We cannot do it.
My favorite part was when the 32X came out, they made this huge deal about how the Genesis can't even handle Virtua Fighter, but if you get a 32X, you can play Virtua Fighter on your Genesis. And it was like a huge thing, like you have to have the power of the 32X. And then the Saturn came out, and Virtua Fighter 2 was coming out, and they're like, oh, and also Virtua Fighter 2 will be on Genesis, and you don't even need the 32X. And it was very confusing from a marketing perspective.
And really, I don't even feel like this should be on the list because it is not a port of Virtua Fighter 2.
No.
It's a totally new, weird 2D Virtua Fighter game they made.
I feel like if they had called it like Virtua Fighter Lite or Virtua
Fighter Flat.
The flat subgenre.
Let's go back to making flat games. You guys remember flat games? Back before it was all bulbousy and shit.
Fucking hate the third dimension. But no.
There you go, Saturn. Whenever you complain about Mario 64, you can just be like, I just like my games better flat.
You bring me back them flat ones. I need more flat ones. No, Virtua Fighter 2 on Genesis, I don't like it. I think it is a terrible game. Not just a bad downport, but I have known people that just loved it. I don't know what's wrong with them. I tried
to put some time in, but I'm really not a big fan of any of the Virtua Fighters as of yet. I don't know if I just haven't I don't get it yet, or what. So I really don't have much room to speak as far as like.
I got roped into a lot of Virtua Fighter 2 on Saturn, and then again Virtua Fighter 4 on PS2 by my fighting game friends.
Virtua Fighter 2, like the real Virtua Fighter 2, not this weird fucking fake-ass version they made, was a lot of fun, but mostly because it was hilarious, because I would, like, kick someone, and then I would fly above them into space, and, like, that was funny. But, yeah.
Yeah, I've never been good at Virtua Fighter at all, but I kind of figured it out just playing it a lot.
So exiting the Genesis era, we get into later ports, and this is the delineation that I want to point out here is suddenly these games went from being very faithful arcade ports to being literally exact arcade ports.
Yes. And
like these are the arcade games.
And sometimes you would still see some quality of life improvements that did
Right.
still happen from time to time, but they would be less pronounced, and the visuals on the games would be near identical to the hardware.
Right.
So it doesn't feel like a port so much as just another release of the game.
Right.
So just real quickly, Saturn games like Virtua Fighter, Virtua Fighter 2, Daytona USA, and Virtua Cop were all pack-in titles for the Saturn at one point in the system's life, at least in North America.
I think I have all of those in little cardboard slipcases that I presume came with my Saturn when it was bought new.
Those were bundled versions. I don't have Virtua Fighter 1, but I have the others. And then several classic arcade compilations were also released with fairly accurate emulation. These are like the really old stuff. The 80s and early 90s stuff got some compilations on there. Other games that were ported to the Saturn, Virtual On, which was a very good port, and it used a twin stick.
Yeah, the twin stick peripheral on Virtual On was really cool. Virtual
Very
On,
expensive.
I feel like is forgotten, but man, what a fun game. Also supported SegaNet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I assumed to play online.
Yeah.
But
The Saturn modem was super crazy for its time. I remember we would get on there and just like browse AOL because what were you going to do?
You did it. It's the future.
I don't think the only game that we had that we could actually play online was Baku Baku, which I still love, and I'm so angry that they've just left it on the Saturn.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't think I played anything online.
Yeah.
But no, Baku Baku is a good arcade port. The Saturn version is excellent. Honestly, I'd even play the Game Gear version, even if it's a shitty arcade port. It's still Baku Baku.
I did know that the Saturn version of Sega Rally lacked transparent windows because the Saturn could not render transparency.
The Saturn is notoriously shit at transparency. Some really late Saturn games use some like really impressive tricks to make it happen, but it's not supported by the hardware at all.
Yeah.
You got lots of racing games and then all the various Virtua series all got home ports. House of the Dead got a very good port with like unsupport, obviously, and added some new stuff.
It was Tantalus Interactive that did that port.
I feel like I recognize that name from something.
I couldn't tell you from where. They include extra game modes and characters, and they had a remix soundtrack for that
I have
version.
to look it up. Die Hard Arcade also famously got a very good port on the Saturn and is super expensive now.
Well, I have it on a CDR and it costs me like 70 cents. Works great.
Okay, that version is pretty cheap.
The Saturn version of Die Hard Arcade also includes a port of Deep Scan, which was a 1979 Sega arcade game, so it's twice a home port of an arcade game by Sega.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is interesting that as we go from Sega Master System to like Saturn and then now into Dreamcast, there's just less to say about the games because it's basically just like it is the arcade version. Yeah, like there's not much. It's like it's here you go. It's the whole thing, especially with the Dreamcast.
Oh yeah, because they had just released the Naomi hardware around the time of the Dreamcast release, which is basically just Dreamcast hardware in an arcade cabinet. And not only was Sega using that, but other companies were using it. Like Capcom used it for Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Namco used it for Soul Calibur in the arcade. So when those games were brought to the Dreamcast, they were not just faithful arcade ports, they were lazy arcade ports. Even when they added stuff, they were still pretty lazy because it was just a one-for-one copy. But some quick examples of some of Sega's first-party stuff: House of the Dead 2, Typing of the Dead, Crazy Taxi.
Now hold on, was there an arcade version of Typing of the Dead?
Absolutely, yes. It is Japanese. It is Japanese exclusive. However, it was imported to several arcades here in the U.S. because there was an English mode on it.
What kind of fucking keyboard do you attach to an arcade machine?
It was a sit-down arcade machine, and it just had two keyboards, one for each player. And they were Japanese-style arcade keyboards, so they obviously had the kana and the kanji on there. But there was an English mode, so you could play it typing the English words.
That's wild.
And
I don't know why that's so wild to me.
I did.
Just
I have
the
played
idea
the
of a
arcade
keyboard
version.
in an arcade is so like that's wrong to me. It's like a kid in a bar. I'm like that doesn't go together. Like,
Sega had to put that together because then they could pitch any unused cabinets as a conversion kit for Mavis Teaches Typing, the arcade game.
I could just imagine them selling unused Typing of the Dead arcade kits like schools. Kids like sitting there learning math in a Typing of the Dead arcade cabinet. Windows 95 on the screen.
I like to think that they don't even turn off the game in the background. So like they're doing their exercises and you just hear, suffer like G did. Greatness. Anyway. Obviously you got Crazy Taxi, Virtua Tennis, got a good Dreamcast port, Zombie Revenge, Samba de Amigo. I fucking love Samba de Amigo.
The home port of Samba de Amigo adds a lot of content.
Yes, and Samba adds new music as well. It's an excellent port.
In a lot of ways, really, these home ports, because Crazy Taxi included a larger map as well.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, these are like like the equivalent of if they released expansions for these arcade games is what they really more what they feel like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk future Sega stuff because obviously the Dreamcast was their last console,
and they stopped making games.
And they stopped. They don't make things anymore.
Yeah,
they definitely didn't just release a new Yakuza game,
which I actually really want to pick up.
I really do.
Trying to wait for it to hit Game Pass just in case.
Is it gonna?
I hope so. All the others have, haven't they?
Oh man, if Cyberpunk wasn't less than a month away, I would go in for it.
Right.
But I don't know that I'm going to play 2 in-depth games like that. So back to back. But CDPR has kind of been upsetting me lately, so I might cancel Cyberpunk and just get Yakuza.
Yeah, I've not played enough of any of the other Yakuza games to get into any of them, but I heard this one is just littered with Dragon Quest references, so I have to try it.
Right. Apparently, the main character is a Dragon Quest fanatic. That's where it all comes from. Right. So I don't know.
I'm ready.
We'll see.
I'm excited.
We'll see.
Anyway, after that, after the Dreamcast fizzled, they continued to port their arcade games to PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and as we've mentioned in the past, a lot of those were excellent. Like Monkey Ball is a improved port in every possible way.
Across the board, they usually tend to be continually improved ports.
House of the Dead 3 on Xbox was an improved port, and it included House of the Dead 2 as an unlockable. On PS2, you had Virtua Fighter 4 got an excellent port, and then Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution got released as a PS2 exclusive. So just excellent ports on their continued support of future consoles. And they have shifted more to home console games in recent years, obviously, because the arcade scene is mostly dead. But
it is?
I know, it's surprising.
Since when?
Since at least 1997. Let's say 97.
Oh, no. I'm behind.
And those games that they have still produced often get home ports. It's mostly racing games and stuff. But they'll end up getting home ports eventually, though. It looks like they are getting out of the arcade business. I believe somebody just bought their entire arcade arm. So
yeah, they seem to be shifting away from it. I'm hoping that this is not a death for Sega, but a rebirth for them.
Yeah.
They seem to be really banking a lot on Yakuza, and they have many other properties. They have a lot of strategy game properties on PC. They seem to be thriving in other areas, and I just think they've reached a point that they don't need the arcade operations anymore.
Yeah, and as arcades continue to die, it doesn't help to hang on to that when their home console stuff is doing fine. Also, they have Atlas, and that's also been doing very well for them.
True. So I'm hopeful for Sega's future. They're doing well, as far as I can tell.
I believe so.
The arcade buyout seems to be them jettisoning less profitable arms of their business, I hope.
Yeah.
As far as final thoughts, go play some Sega arcade games. Maybe like post-Master System games. Some of those are laudable versions.
Yes.
But they are
very
still
impressive
Master System
8-bit
versions.
games.
Yes. But for most of them, there are much better, even home versions that you can play that came out later because Sega continually releases their stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Nintendo. But it's surprising how much arcade punch Sega was able to add to all of their systems.
Yeah.
Even if it was largely because of the intentional convergence of their home and arcade hardware that just kind of slowly drove in the same direction as each other for so long that eventually it was just,
Also, they just went a very different direction than Nintendo did because Nintendo, when the Famicom came out, largely exited the arcade industry for decades. They've only recently started to dabble back into it, and they're not even making those games. They're just licensing them. Yeah. So Sega still kept producing arcade games, so they had something to bring home. And so it was consistently the best versions of those games.
Yeah. Anyway, Sega's great. Go play their stuff. It's available now everywhere on everything for the most part.
And a big thing about those, the ports that we've talked about is, like we mentioned, a lot of them are improved from the arcade version in some way. So even when the arcade versions do get re-released, while they might look a little better, they might not play as well. So it's worth looking at some of these arcade or these home ports, which again are largely still available today.
True. And as always, this show is brought to you by our wonderful patrons that support us at patreon.com/retrowarriors. And we would like to thank the following patrons for their support: James Taylor,
Elk Neodaffs,
a huge Earthbound fan, excited to try it for the first time.
Definitely not a bot, Marlowe221.
John Fry.
Pogs are back.
We talked about Pogs for like 30 minutes on Talking Wizards last night.
Nice.
I mean, a long time. Probably more than anyone has continuously talked about Pogs since
decades.
Pogs.
Since Pogs the first time or since Pogs in the 90s?
Any of the times. What is a name? A miserable little pile of letters?
Not enough talk. How about Casey McGinty?
Evelyn Belchev.
And Mark Meredith are the people we want to thank this week.
Yes, our wonderful patrons that support us. If you would like to support us, then you can. If you don't like Patreon but want to support us, then you can.
That's true.
We have a Redbubble. And if you don't want to support us, but you like us, then rate and review us. And if you don't like us, then why are you here?
Now, how did you make it this far?
I mean, I understand trying the episode, but going all the way to the end and just not liking it the whole time, it just seems weird.
Yeah. Surely you had something better to do.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.